Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We'll just give it a couple of minutes to let everybody log on, and then we'll get cracking in about 2 minutes. Thanks. Okay, I think we're almost there. So again, hi everyone, and thanks very much for tuning in today for the third webinar in our Touchpoint webinar series, which is brought to you by EEX Group. Today, we're going to be focusing on pre-trade risk management, and we'll also be giving you a live demo of the risk manager function, which will be available via Touchpoint. The presentation itself should last about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we'll have the opportunity to answer any questions you may have. If you have a question, please submit it via the Q&A function in Teams, and we'll make sure to answer them once the presentation has concluded. So now all the housekeeping's done, I would now like to hand over to Richard Heath, who will be giving today's webinar. So Rich, over to you.
Thanks very much, Michael, and hello and welcome to everybody from me to what is the penultimate webinar in this series on our new trade registration platform, Touchpoint. As Michael says, today we're going to look predominantly at the pre-trade risk management system within Touchpoint, and I will show you exactly how that works on the platform itself. So let's move over to the next slide and have a look at the agenda for today. We'll begin with a recap of the platform for anyone who's tuning in to the webinars for the first time, an introduction to Touchpoint, what is it and why are we doing it. We'll then move on to looking at the pre-trade risk manager functions, as I said, and we'll see exactly how clearing members can use the system to control the trading activity of their clients through the platform. We'll do a recap on that once it's finished, and then we'll move on to looking at the rest of the webinars in the series and the other events that we have planned for the launch of Touchpoint. I'll show you the contact details, who you can talk to get more information, and then of course we'll end with the Q&A. And on the webinar last week we had quite a lot of questions, quite an extensive Q&A, so I hope that we'll have the same this time as well. Okay, let's get started. We'll move on to the next slide and run through what is Touchpoint. So Touchpoint is the new web-based trade registration system for EEX Group. It's the first time that we're bringing all asset classes together in a single platform for this function. It's feature rich, it's very, very easy to use, and the idea behind Touchpoint really is to make it as easy as possible to come to EEX and register a trade. It caters for a number of different users, and if we move on to the next slide, we can have a look at those users and precisely what the features for them are. So those users are mainly the brokers, the clearing members, and of course the traders. Touchpoint has a slightly different set of features and functions for each group, and each type of user has their own view of the world through Touchpoint. So for brokers, primarily, it's about submission of deals which have been arranged OTC, which then need to be sent onward to the exchange. And for full details on how that can be done, you need to tune into the recording of the previous webinar last week where we looked at the trade registration engine. For clearing members, the main feature and function is the risk management side of the platform, which we will look at today. And for traders, it's about the live information that's coming through the platform. They can see everything that's being done on their behalf, and indeed all types of users have a great deal of live information available in the system. As well as the front end of the system, which we think is very, very easy to use, you have the opportunity to connect directly via API, and so all of the features and functions in the platform can also be connected directly to your systems, whether they be in the back office or whether that be for trade registration or for a number of other uses. And that's something that we'll talk about on the webinar next week. Okay, so that sort of does the roundup of what is Touchpoint. Let's move on and we'll start thinking more about the risk management side of the platform. So next slide, please. So pre-trade risk management in Touchpoint. As I've said, this is all about the clearing members, and what it's really doing is giving clearing members the ability to set a number of different types and different levels of granularity of limits for their customers, which will govern the trades that come through the platform. You can set limits per client, you can set broad limits which cover all clients in one go, and you have a number of different ways in which you could do that. So you can set limits based on lots, you can set limits based on notional value, and you can set limits based on the initial margin contribution associated to each trade. You can also set your clients to stop, either as a whole or individually, and you can set them to trade freely with no limits whatsoever. Limits can be set for all business on a per client basis, or you could have it on a product basis, or you could have a combination of the two, and you can have as many limits as you need per client. So if you want to have just a very broad brush control, that's quick and easy to do. If you really want to set up a very granular system for individual clients, then that functionality is there as well. So the amount of limits and the level of complexity really is up to the users to define. You have within the limit engine a dashboard that shows you what's happening with your clients, which ones have limits set up for them. It shows you the trades which are going through against those limits, and crucially, it allows you to see whether there's any trades that have failed due to the limits being breached, and where your clients are in terms of using up the limits that you have set for them. We also have in the system a default setting, so you can very, very quickly and easily control access for all clients just at the click of a single button. Okay, so I think that's enough in way of an introduction. Let's move on and look at the actual platform. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so now we should see the logon screen for Touchpoint. Again, for anyone who's tuning in for the first time, this logon screen, as well as being the gateway to the tool itself, also contains information on the system. We will include the video of the webinar series here, so you have almost a kind of video user guide of how to use the system. And of course, you have the contact details of the support team, which will run the system and which will help customers and users of the system should they have any questions or queries or need any assistance with the training activity that's going through it. Okay, so I will log in. Today I'll be logging in as our clearing member user. Before I do that, I'll just say that all of the demos that we're doing, they are in the test version of the platform. That means a few things. Sometimes the test version runs very slightly slowly in comparison to the live version. I will go through the different features, not too quickly. So if anything, it is a little bit slow on the other end. You should catch up. Of course, if you feel that your connection is slow and you miss something in the demo, please ask a question at the end about what you missed, and we'll have a look at it again, or go and look at the recording of the webinar afterwards. The other thing to say is, because the test system is a test system, the version that I'm using is not connected end to end all the way through to EEX and ECC, and that means that the trades that I put in on the demos don't go anywhere. From the demo perspective, this has no effect. We can see the way the system works very easily, but it does mean that trades don't actually go all the way through to acceptance. But when you're putting dummy trades into a dummy system, sometimes it's a little bit reassuring to know that they haven't gone all the way through. Okay, so once I've logged in, I come to the dashboard page, the landing page, and I can see here the different tools that I have available as this type of user. I can see again, reassuringly, this test icon at the top. I have my main navigation in the middle of the page, and I can click on these to go to these different tools. I also have this sidebar navigation as well, which enables me to go to different parts of the platform. On this page, I can scroll down in the same way that I did on the main landing page, and again, I have all of the information and the support details of the team. So when I'm in Touchpoint and working with it, if I ever have a question or any difficulty, I only need to come to this home page, and I can always get the contact details of the team that runs the platform to help me out. Okay, so let's have a look at the risk manager. When I log in here, logging in as a sort of demo clearing member user, what I see is a screen with a list of my clients on here. So we've set up these pretend clients in order for me to use the platform and to show you how it works. So I have here, this is my dashboard. It's showing me the clients that I have. At the moment, I have no limits set up against them, so there's not very much information in here. I then, on the right hand side of the screen, have a number of different navigation items and tools that I can use. The first one that we're going to look at is the default limit selection. So here you can see that the default limit is disabled. Now, what this means is that if any of one of these 4 clients is trading, there is no pre-trade risk limit set for them at the moment, and any trade they do would be accepted by the system. Now, that might be the setup that I'm happy with, or I might want to control things a little bit more, in which case I can enable this. Now, this automatically kind of puts a stop on all of these clients, so any trade they do will be rejected until such time as I have set a bespoke limit for them. So we find this is a setting that many of the users in the platform do use. It just means that if you're adding new clients or anything like that, you always have this kind of default limit, and should you if they start trading before you've been able to set up a proper limit for them or something, the trades will be rejected. So this is a kind of sort of safe operating environment from which you can go in and then start to create bespoke limits. For the purposes of the demo today, I'm going to leave this off because I don't want to set up lots and lots of limits and spend several hours of your time here. So I just set up a few, and I want the other trades to go through. The next one we have is the actual action of setting up the limits. So let's have a look at this. So to start creating limits, we simply click on this button, add limits for multiple clients, and we get this new menu item come up. So from here, I could set limits for all of my clients just with one click, or I could go in and pick a specific client who I want to set a limit for. So I'm going to choose dummy trading 1. I then come and I have the description of the type of limits that I would like to set. So as you can see in here, you have a trading stop, and then you have the various different types of limits. So a lot limit, a lot per trade, a margin limit, and the margin limit, as I said, is its initial margin contribution. So for every single contract that's offered through the platform, all of the EEX contracts, there is this initial margin value against each contract, and that's what's used to build up the initial margin value of the trades that are done, and that's then compared to whatever limits you set in here for the margin limit, and that information is taken from the overnight process run by ECC every night, so it's always the most up-to-date margin info. You then have these notional values or total value per trade numbers that you can set as well. So for the ease of the demo, I'm going to start with a lot limit for this client. Now, the next thing I look at is how long I want this limit to apply for. So I have a number of easy options here, or I can set a bespoke custom time range, or I can set no expiry, and that's what we're going to do for the demo today. I then have the option to see whether this should apply for the full day or for a time range within the day, and I'm just going to leave that on all day. I can then set the limit up, and again, for the purposes of the demo, I'm just going to set quite a low limit because we want to see what happens when that limit is exceeded. Okay, and then I have a number of different options here. I can apply the limit each day, so that would be a limit of 10 lots every day, or it could be 10 lots across the time frame that I have set. So again, you have some controls to decide how you want to manage your client's exposure. The next one I have is the warning threshold, and this is a level which I can free type just to create a threshold when the client's trading activity has meant that they've used up 75% of the limit that's been set for them. That then triggers a number of different things. It could trigger an alert for me, and so I can set that up, and then I can create alerts, which I'll show you how to do later, which will tell me when I might need to go in again and have a look at this client's activity and decide you know, how they're looking in comparison to their limits and whether I want to take any actions on the limit that I've set for them. The next option is whether we want to enable or disable netting. The netting in the platform is done at quite a basic level. So contracts which are in the same contract and in the same expiry are automatically netted off against one against the other. So if you're long September on a particular contract and then you do a short trade for September in the same contract, that would obviously be a risk reducing trade, and so the netting would reduce the amount of limit that the client has used up in that situation. I then have the option to select the product groups which I want to this limit to apply to. So I can set them up very easily as all and just say this is my client's limit across all their trading, or I could go in and I would see the particular types of product groups that this client has available to them. If I select one of those product groups, I then get a further option to go in and select a particular contract. In this case, we will just say all again. And then I have the option to select which clearing account this should apply for. In most cases, there's a single clearing account for these clients. Once I'm happy with the way that I've set my limit up, I simply submit that, and I can now start to see in my dashboard that there's a little bit more information and that this client has an active limit. So I just want to show you what happens when that limit is breached. So I'm just going to log off as the clearing member for one moment, and I will log back in as our trusty broker user from last week's demo. We'll go and we'll log in a trade for that dummy one account for whom we've just set a limit up. So we'll just select the contract. As we talked through this last week, I won't go through it in great detail. I'll go through it quite quickly just to show you the outcome. Now, we've got a limit of 10 lots set up against this client. So if we put in 15, that trade should fail. Just select the client details. We didn't set limits for any of the other clients, so the other side should be completely unaffected. We We go to submit that trade, and we can see that at the broker login, they immediately get this message that the trade has failed due to risk assessment and the side of the trade for which it's failed and the lots limit has been exceeded. So the broker knows that there's a problem with the buyer on this trade. So we will cancel that. That trade has not gone anywhere. It does not get sent to the exchange, and you can see that in the trade tape, it comes up immediately as failed risk assessment. So let's just go back now and have a look from our clearing member perspective and see what that looks like on that side. We log back in, we go back to the risk manager, and now we can start to see that we get more information again within our dashboard. And so we can go in and we can have a look at this firm and we can see what's going on. So we can see that we have a lot limit here, what the limit is, the threshold, the netting's enabled, and all of the details. And we can see that there has been trades that have been rejected due to this limit. From this screen as well, I can go in and I can edit the limit, and that's what I'm going to do now. So I just click on the edit button and I get the limit open again. And what I'm going to do just for ease is I'm just going to extend this limit so we can book a trade and see it go through and see how that works. Now, once I'm happy with that, I submit that, and then I then see the updated limit information here. I also now see that there is some history to this limit, that it has been changed, and so I can click on that and I can see the updates to the limit and when they were made as well, so I have an audit trail over my limits. Okay, so now that's been updated, just going to go back and push the trade through again, just so you can see what it looks like once they have been going through. Back in as our trusty broker. We're going to do, just for speed of the demo, is we're going to try and book the same trade again. Now we would expect it to go through with no problems this time because the limit's been extended. And now we can see that that trade has gone through. Because we're not connected, because it's a test system, it will stay as processing rather than ending up as completed. But if I dig into the trade from the broker side, I can look at the history and I can see here that this has passed the risk assessment within the platform. So we'll just go back, we'll look at the clearing member for one final time so we can see now the differences once the trades have been accepted. Now we have a little bit more information again. We can see that the trades have been accepted for this client. And if we dig in now, we start to see the usage of their limit, and we start to get more information in this panel as well. And from our dashboard here, we can also have a few other tools and views. We can look at the trades which have been going through, and you can see there are a number of different trades when we extend the date filter here that have been accepted, trades that have been rejected due to the different risk manager levels. So, and you can see the types of limits that we have available as well. So you start to, as your clients do a lot more trading, you start to have a lot more information in here to see exactly what is happening with what they're doing. You can also from here set some alerts. So pretty simple, once you click on that, you can just add a new alert. You simply add your email address, and then you decide what type of alerting you want, whether you want to see rejections, warning thresholds, active limits, and then you simply save that alert, and then you'll start to get email alerts when those triggers happen for your individual clients. So you don't have to sit and watch the platform all day, of course. You can set up some different ways for it to interact with you. Finally, you do have the option to import and export, excuse me, import and export the limits that you've set up. So you can export them all, you can edit them off the platform, you can upload them again. You don't always have to interact with the platform through this front end. And of course, as I said at the beginning, we do have the opportunity to connect the platform directly to your systems via API. So it's possible to do more of the tasks off the platform and have everything connected automatically. And the same with obviously the alerting and other functions too. And if that's something you're interested in, contact us and we'll talk to you about how that can be arranged. Okay, I think that covers the basics of the risk manager. There are a lot of different options that you can have in here. As I've said, you can add limits on top. So if you wanted to continue to add limits, even if it's for the same client, you can continue to do that. You can set these up any way that you want. And once you have more than one limit in, the system will start to look at all of the limits set up for your client whenever a single trade comes in. So now when we look here, we start to see that we have multiple limits for the client. We have a lot limit here covering this particular product set. We have a margin limit covering all products, and we can build that up really to whatever level of complexity you want to have. It can be very simple, or it could be as granular as you need. Okay, that really does cover, I think, all of the functionality. I'll stop sharing the screen now. We'll go back to the slides and then we'll move through those and then head to the Q&A. Okay, so we saw all of the risk management functionality. I think the main benefits of the system, other than the fact that it is very, very easy to use, and we have had a number of clearing members using this for some period of time, so we have developed it over time and fine-tuned it, but as well as it being very easy to use, the risk controls really are very, very granular. So as I was just saying, you know, you can have whatever kind of specific levels that you want, and if you have multiple limits for a single client, what happens is that whenever a trade is booked, the system will look at all of those limits, regardless of how many you have set up, and it will see whether they apply to that trade, and if so, whether the trade is going to breach the limit or not. And if any one of those limits is breached, that trade will be rejected. So you can have whatever level of complexity you want in here, and there's never any kind of contradiction in the system. It always looks at everything in there before it accepts a trade. You have that live view of your client business, so you have a couple of ways in which you can see how the client's business is affecting their limits, how much of their limit they've used, whether they're hitting a warning threshold, whether they've had any trades rejected. So you can very easily see exactly what's going on. And you can, of course, as I said, configure some alerts so that you get alerted whenever one of those thresholds is passed or a particular activity level happens, or certainly in the case of rejection, so you can then come into the system, you can look at what's happening, and if you need to take any action, you can do that quickly and easily. And within the demo, we looked at how quick it was to simply amend somebody's limit, and then when the broker rebooked the trade, it was accepted immediately. You have the download and upload functionality. So if you do want to have a very kind of granular setup, it's not something that you necessarily have to sit there and do in the front end of the system. You could do that in a different way, and you have the possibility to directly connect the platform to whatever in-house systems you have. Finally, and I think one of the really important details, and we did see it in the demo, is because Touchpoint as a trade registration system sits upstream of the exchange, any trade that breaches a limit is immediately rejected at that stage. It does not get sent to the exchange and then sit in some kind of pending status for you to sort out. It's immediately rejected. And so if a client has breached a limit and it's not something that you want to extend, there's no process to get in to work through a pending trade. The trade has been immediately rejected, and from that point on, the client would only be able to book risk reducing trades that work within that limit setup. So you really do have a very good kind of hard cutoff should you need that. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit more about the webinar series. So as I said, we're on the third webinar now, so we've got just the one more to go next week. It is important to mention that that's not the end of the Touchpoint events. We also have, of course, the official Touchpoint launch event on the 8th of September, which is part of our broader events on that day in London at the Ned, and I know there'll be some more details on that later. Invitations have gone out, but we would love you to join us at that as well. Next week's webinar will focus on the features and functions of the platform that we haven't discussed yet, particularly the analytics and information within the platform and the connectivity options. And as always, this webinar and the others have been recorded. And so if you want to go back and look at the content in the previous webinars, you can do that very easily. If you have any questions and we don't cover them today or they come up after today, you can always contact us. So if we move on to the next slides, for general inquiries about the platform or the project, you can contact me directly, and my contact details are there. For anything around the support and operation of the platform, Touchpoint will be run by our team in Singapore. Please contact Ray Ang. And for any media or communications inquiries, please contact Michael Mervyn Jones. So that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed the demo for today. We'll move on now and look at the questions.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Rich. And thank you to everybody who has already submitted a question. We will do our best to get through them all. Also, thank you very much for the people that contacted myself and Richard after last week's webinar. There were some supplementary questions, so we'll put these all together and kick off. First question for you, Richard. What is the difference between C7 and Touchpoint?
Okay, well, C7 is the clearing system of ECC. Touchpoint is a trade registration system that sits completely outside of the exchange. They're quite different. As I say, Touchpoint is primarily there for brokers to register those OTC deals that they've arranged and which need to be submitted through to the exchange, for the clearing members to have a view into how they can control that trade registration business, and for the traders involved in it, a live view of everything that's going on, plus some other tools. So Touchpoint is all about deal capture and trade registration. The next step is it flows through to the exchange, which then goes through to the T7 system, and from then onwards to the clearinghouse, which is C7. So very distinct and different applications with different uses.
Okay, thanks for that, Rich. Staying on that topic, is Touchpoint going to replace T7 or C7 GUI, or is it only for OTC postings? No,
so it doesn't replace that. You can still use T7 to register trades. Touchpoint is an additional system, and there's a number of areas where there is some overlap, and you could use one or the other. There are, of course, some areas where Touchpoint is a little bit different, and that is mainly around the flow and control for indirect clients or clients that are not members of the exchange. So no, it doesn't replace it. It should be looked at as complementary, but it does offer, some settings and controls that you can't get in other parts of the trading infrastructure.
Thanks for that, Rich. Can Touchpoint risk limits separate single margin types, e.g. limit for span versus limits for IMSM and CESM?
So the way that the limits in Touchpoint work is they're all based on ECC's overnight span parameter file. So we're simply looking at the initial margin contribution for each individual contract. and it's those individual initial margin contributions which are added up and create, a kind of initial margin value for the client's individual portfolio. And every time a new trade is booked, that portfolio is kind of recreated, and the initial margin value of it is rerun, and that new initial margin value is then tested against the limit value to see if there's a breach. So it works from the span process that ECC run overnight every day.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question. I think we've covered this, but is Touchpoint made for OTC trades only?
So yeah, Touchpoint is, as I say, it's upstream of the exchange. It's actually outside of the regulated systems of the exchange, and therefore it is for that space of OTC trade capture and registration. So yes, there's no trading, centralized order book or anything like that within Touchpoint. It's all about submission of those trades which have been organized off the exchange, which then need to be sent through to the exchange and onwards for clearing.
Thanks for that. As a clearing member, we set limits in C7 and T7 admin GUI. Are the limits set in Touchpoint leading, or are the C7 limits leading?
So the different limits apply differently, and so limits within Touchpoint apply to business which is registered through Touchpoint. They do not have an impact on the limits set up in other parts of the business, and they're specifically designed to enable you to control the activity of each individual agency or indirect client, and those clients who are, those clients which are not members of the exchange. So you can have much more granular control over that type of business, but those limits exist independently, and the limits in Touchpoint only apply at the current time to business that comes through the Touchpoint platform.
Fantastic, thank you for that. Will the members for clearing be added by EEX, or does the clearing member need to add them?
The members for clearing, I mean, by that, I'm assuming that we mean the clients
Correct,
for
yeah.
each individual clearing member. So this will work, there's a kind of two-step process here. So initially what we're doing with the Touchpoint platform is we're combining a number of platforms we already have. So we'll be combining the Japanese Power platform, the KB Tech portal, and the ClearTech portal into a single system. Now, within those three systems, there is already an extensive sort of static data setup of clearing members, clients, brokers, and all of that information will be combined and then imported into the new platform. So, and that includes all of the existing limits which are set up in any of those platforms. So everything from there will be transferred into Touchpoint on day one. So it's not a kind of empty setup that you're coming into. If you already have clients doing business through any of those routes and you already have limits set up, that will all be transferred. From that time onwards, what happens is that the team that we have running the platform, the operations team in Singapore, they will help members and users to set up the static information within the system. So a clearing member could provide the static information for their clients, and that would all be set up in the system by that individual team. So I kind of describe it like that because I want to draw a difference between the initial setup process and then the ongoing process, which is what you would then think of as the kind of normal process. So whenever you have a new client that you need to add, you simply contact the operations team and they will do that for you.
Great stuff. This is with regards to the limits. Will the warning set by the clearing member also be sent out to the member involved?
It can be configured that way, yes. So in terms of being able to see the limits that are set, the client for whom you are setting those limits, they obviously have a view of that as well, and that can be set up so that they are told when they have crossed a particular threshold. So yes, you can inform the not you necessarily, but the client can be informed as well where they are within that setup so that they can manage their own trading activity accordingly.
Thanks, Rich. Next question. If I remove or add a limit restriction, how quickly will that limit be applied?
Immediately.
Fantastic.
Immediately. So, and you saw in the demo, the moment that I changed the limit and rebooked the trades, it went through immediately. So from the time you click the button to submit the limit, that's when it becomes active.
Great stuff. What is the onboarding process for my company to start using Touchpoint?
Okay, so in order to onboard, if you're not an existing user, again, we contact the team that run the platform in Singapore. They have a number of forms and setup process to go through. It's relatively light touch. It's quite easy, I would say, and they will set you up on the platform with the correct access, and then also set up any client static if that's needed as well.
Great stuff. Questions just come in. Interesting one. Is Touchpoint mandatory?
No, not at all. Touchpoint's a system that we've created to make doing business with EEX easier, particularly in certain areas. Of course, you don't have to use it. There are other routes to register trades into the exchange, both ones from the other platforms that we provide, and of course there are also third-party STP providers as well. So no, absolutely not. It's not mandatory. We hope you'd use it. We hope you find it helpful and that it creates efficiency. But no, of course, it's not mandatory.
Okay, thanks for that. Can my bank just have view-only users?
Yes. So all the different user types can have view-only users set up for them. So whether you're a broker or a clearing member, or even a trading user, you can have view-only accounts set up for different people within your organization if that's what you need. Okay,
thanks very much. If I apply more than one type of limit restriction to a company, which one will take priority?
Well, so as I said, all the limits, the system looks at all the limits every time a trade is booked, and if a trade breaches any of those limits, then it will be rejected. So it's not really, there's no way of saying, you know, this limit, we want this limit to apply unless this one does, and it looks at all the limits. So you can set the limits up any way you like, and it will check a trade against every single one before it's accepted.
Fantastic. This is a question that's come up on every webinar so far. So here we go, the $6 million question. How much does the service cost?
Okay, so the version of Touchpoint that we're looking at today and all the features and functions within it is free to EEX members, clearing members, and indirect clients of those clearing members, and of course the broker members as well.
Okay, thanks for that. A question in from Bert. Is the margin coming from Touchpoint trades added to the margin calculated in the C7?
No, so as I said, the way that the risk settings in the different platforms work is independently from each other. So if you set up a margin limit within Touchpoint, that will apply to the business coming through Touchpoint for that individual client. So they're not kind of added up across the different systems, no.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Do I need special software or hardware installed at my end?
No, you don't. Touchpoint's delivered via the internet. So as long as you can get on an internet browser, you can get the system. It works on all of the kind of major browsers. We do find occasionally that there are organizations out there that limit the variety of websites that their people can get access to. If that's the case, we can of course provide the URLs in advance, and so that they could be unlocked by any IT security if that's needed. So no hardware installed, nothing to download, simply delivered via the web.
Great stuff. How many days can I extract transactions? Is this 5 days, 2 weeks?
Okay, so when you go into the system and you search for historical transactions, you can look at everything. if you wanted to, so you could have a complete history from the platform, or you can then create any kind of date range between, I guess forever and now. So you could look at today, yesterday, last month. You could look at a bespoke time range, or you can simply look at everything that's in there.
Great stuff. How is my client metadata, e.g. client trading company names, trader names, clearing accounts, deployed into the production platform?
So that's all set up by the team in Singapore. We simply have a database sitting behind the platform where that information is entered, and all of the party relationships are kept in there as well. And of course, that then defines what you see and can interact with on the front end. So that's that information is provided by a number of different forms, and then it's set up by that team in Singapore in the back end of the platform.
Great stuff. Will Touchpoint work on any browser?
Yes, more or less. As I said, any kind of major browser that works on all the major browsers, and we regularly test it on a number of different browsers. Sometimes when you're testing the system and running demos, it's beneficial to have several versions of it open at the same time. And so, yes, it works on all main browsers.
Okay, another question that's popped up in previous webinars, Rich. What do I do if a new member of staff joins that requires access to the system?
Again, so for anything like that, any kind of account management, user management, any of those type of queries, you simply contact the team in Singapore, and they will take you through the process for adding, removing users, changing access, all of those type of requests.
Okay, we're getting through them. Can I apply a specific limit to just a range, or my clients, and or to the clients at the same time?
I'm not sure if I fully understand the question specific, but you can apply a limit to cover all clients, or a group of clients, or a single client, and you can apply different limits for those clients again. So again, you have this very kind of broad level of functionality. So you can start with a very high limit that covers everyone. You could then drill down and have individual limits for individual clients on individual products or across lots of products. So again, you can create lots of kind of overlapping layers of limits, I guess is one way to think about them within the system. So really the functionality is not kind of limited in any way, and therefore it's up to you how you create those limits, and that can be done in pretty much any way that you should need to manage that business.
Wonderful. Can the limit net out the long and short positions?
So yes, so as I said, the netting, and as you saw in the platform, you can choose whether you want it to net or not. The netting, as I said, at the moment is at a fairly basic level. We are looking at how we can have a more kind of sophisticated netting in there, but right now it's at a fairly basic level, and it is longs and shorts within the same contract and expiry. So same contract, same expiry, long and shorts will net off if that's what you choose.
Great stuff. Is there a 24/7 service desk in case of technical issues during EU trading?
So there's not a 24/7 service desk. I mean, the team in Singapore, they cover all of the Asian and all of the European days. So they cover all of the market hours of EEX and significantly more besides. So no, they're not there 24 hours a day, but they are there somewhere around 18 hours a day. And so because they cover all of the trading hours of the exchange, there should always be somebody there to help you whenever the exchange is open.
Thanks for that, Rich. Is there a possibility to set a margin value on entity level?
On entity level, do we mean on an individual client?
I would guess
level?
so. This is coming in from Mustafa, so I would guess that's what he means.
So I mean, if that's what you mean, yes, you can set a margin level per client. If it's not what you mean and we misunderstood, then I'm sorry about that, but please contact us and we can talk about it in more detail and make sure that we answer the question correctly.
Thanks for that, Rich. That concludes today's questions, but there was one question from last week that we didn't know the answer to, if we're honest. So I'd like to put that question to you again, which related to trade registration. How many combinations can you have on a single trade?
Yes, that was an interesting question. I talked to the developers about that, and they said there is no limit designed into the platform. So theoretically, no limits on how many you could have.
Okay, Mustafa just come back there, and he's explained when he means entity, he means on a company level.
So I mean, again, I'm sorry that I'm not fully understanding it, but again, do we mean company like in terms of the client company level, in terms of the clearing member company level? I think we should, if we can, we should probably just follow that one up offline to make sure that we don't go through several rounds of explanation and misunderstanding. But
yeah, good idea. So Mustafa, if you could contact Richard directly or myself, Michael Mervyn Jones, by email, all our contact details are on the in this slide deck, which will be posted tomorrow morning. We'll certainly get back to you with an answer. Another question from Mustafa: is there a manual available on the EEX website explaining Touchpoint?
No, at the moment there's not a manual on the EEX website. We will of course be recording all of these sessions, so we can use these as a kind of video manual. We do have other documents that we can share to help you get to know and understand the platform. We can also do one-to-one demos of the platform. So if you need to go into more detail on any specific area of the platform, if you have some very detailed questions, or you simply want a forum where you can ask questions confidentially without sharing information with others, then we can do that for you. That's no problem at all. And we can provide test access to the system as well, so that you can have a play with it and you can learn how to use it, sorry, without being in the real live environment. So we don't have that on the EEX website today. We do have other versions that we can provide to you, and then we have these other options as well for how you can get to know and understand how to use the platform.
Thank you very much, Rich, and again, wonderful questions, lots of questions. So thank you all for submitting the questions and for joining today. We really hope you find today's session beneficial. As I just mentioned, and as Rich has mentioned, there will be a recording of today's webinar on EEX TV from tomorrow, EEX TV being EEX's YouTube channel. That's where you'll find all of these demo webinars. And then when we come to launch, those webinars will also be in Touchpoint. So as Rich mentioned, if you go on to the homepage and you click on View More, you will see all these webinars, which will be an easy to use guide for the functionality of Touchpoint. I should also point out, as Richard said, this is the third in 4 webinars, and then we have our big Fancy Pants launch at the NED, which is happening on the 8th of September. We'd really like as many people there as possible to celebrate the launch. So if you would like, as Rich said, we've sent out invitations for that. If you have not received an invitation or you would like to come, you can contact me directly, Michael Mervyn Jones at EEX.com. Again, my details are in the slide deck, or you can reach out to Ashan Francis, and we'll put her email address, which is ashan.francis@eex.com, in the comments section in a second. Next week, we'll be focusing on information, analytics and connectivity via Touchpoint. So hopefully we'll see you back here, same time, same place. From me, all the best, and I'll hand back over to Rich.
Yeah, so just to say thank you very much for your attention and for joining today, and thank you for the questions. Please do keep them coming, and do feel free to contact us directly after the webinar, and we can go through anything that you need. I hope we'll see you back here again next week, and of course we really hope to see you also on the 8th of September at our Touchpoint launch, and in the evening at our reception as well. So hope to see you all again soon. Thanks again for joining today, and goodbye from me as well.